Welcome, friends. Welcome back to the kitchen. Welcome back to Sunday morning in the old cookbook show. Today we're going to do another pie recipe out of this little cookbook, the Town Crier recipe book. I really like the recipes in this book. This is from 1938 or 1939. I've used enough recipes out of this, I should know by now. 1938. It is from a flour company, and it has a lot of really good recipes and a few duds. Let it be said, there are a few duds in this book. Today we're going to do something called AppleScotch pie. And so there's no scotch in the pie, no scotch at all. So I've got a pot here. I'm going to put in some water, a cup of water, some brown sugar, and it says to use a couple teaspoons of vinegar. I'm going to use apple cider vinegar. It's an apple pie. Apple cider vinegar kind of tracks. We're supposed to put this in and bring it up to a boil. Just give that a little bit of a stir. I guess the idea is that we're making a butterscotch type sauce that we're cooking the apples in and then baking it in a pie shell. So once this comes up to a boil, which shouldn't take long, okay, at this point we put the apples in and we simmer the apples until they become tender. Now the amount of apples that it calls for is pretty vague. It says 6 to 8 apples. How big is an apple? Who knows how big an apple is? All the different varieties of apples are different sizes, even different sizes within the variety of apple. I had fairly small apples today, and so I got 7 apples. I think it should be right. Who knows? While that's simmering, we'll put together the part of the recipe that's going to thicken up the butterscotch sauce. So it calls for a certain amount of brown sugar. 3/4 of the brown sugar is in the pot right now. The other part of the brown sugar is right here. Supposed to mix that together with salt and some flour. Some Town Crier flour, in fact. So we'll get this mixed together. And mixing the flour together with the brown sugar will help it mix into the syrup without the flour clumping, or at least that's the idea. Now, it shouldn't take long for these apples to tenderize boiling in this syrup. Okay, I'm going to say those apples are tender, so I'm going to pull them out and set them aside. The recipe says to let them cool. So at this point, I haven't even rolled out the pie dough yet, because both the apples and after we get the syrup cooked and thickened, they all have to cool down before we put them in the pie shell, before we even get it to the oven. Okay. Last of the apple slices. Set that aside. And now I'm going to whisk in the mixture of flour and brown sugar. And see how that thickened up immediately. So at this point, I think we're good. That thickened immediately, really quickly. Now I've got 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm supposed to mix those in. And then as soon as the butter is melted in, I'm going to pull it off the heat. And once it's off the heat, I will add the vanilla. Okay, butter's melted in. So pull it off the heat, and at this point I'll add in the vanilla. Mix it in, and then I'm just going to leave this on the counter until it comes almost probably to room temperature. In the meantime, I will mix up and roll out the pie dough. Okay, so I've got the base of the shell rolled out in the pan. This is an all butter pie crust. You can find the recipe elsewhere on our channel. And this pie calls for a lattice top. So I'm just going to put the base in the fridge while we roll out the top to make the lattice. Don't be afraid of pie dough. I know I say this every time. Pie dough is something that a lot of people are afraid of. You've been told that it's difficult to make. You've been told that it's finicky. You've been told that it's hard to roll out. You've been told all kinds of things. Don't believe it. Get in there. Just give it a go. Give it a try. It's very forgiving. It's something that you don't really have to worry too much about. Just get in there, make it happen. Don't worry about it. Be fearless. It's going to be okay. So I've got this, I think, rolled out enough. So this is just this is the same size pie pan that I'm using, or pie plate that I'm using. So it will fit. Now, I just get a pizza wheel and I'm going to cut strips. I try to do them as even as I can, but you know, whatever. I'm sure other YouTubers would be out here with a measuring stick and marking it all off. I'm not that kind of person. I am not that kind of person, and it always works out for me. So, now we just come down to assembly. Pie plate. I've got a fork. First goes in the apples. I maybe could have done another apple or two just to fill that up. Let's see. Then goes on our butterscotch. Sorry, AppleScotch. Our AppleScotch mixture. And I'm just going to smooth that around the pan a little bit. This could get messy in the oven. So I'm probably going to bake this on another baking tray. I've got the oven preheated to 425. And I've got the pizza stone in there so that we get a good high heat on the bottom of this pie when we first put it in. A lattice top. Not that difficult. I'll grab the longest ones first. Put the long one across the middle like that. And then a long one across the middle like that. And then from here on out, I'll just sort of build them. And then you just weave them in. So that one goes there. Lift up, and it's messy. Now I've got a little cup of water, and I'll just go around the outside and sort of moisten where they touch the edge of the pie shell. It may not be the prettiest the first time you do it, may not be the prettiest the 10th time you do it, but eventually, you know, you do this hundreds of times, and it'll be great. But I don't think that anyone is ever going to criticize you at the table. Your lattice isn't perfect. I'll just go around with a fork and press this in so everything gets stuck. And then I just go around the outside and trim off bits of the lattice. I don't use a knife for this usually because I like a really nice big thick piece of crust at the top of the pie. So the top of my pie crust is folded under again. And I find if you go around with a knife, it breaks that fold. If you don't fold it, go ahead and use a knife and trim it off. Maybe that's just a particular quirk of mine, but I really like an extra thick bit of crust at the top. Now, like I said, oven's 425, in goes the pie, maybe about a half an hour. Okay, Jules, I give you...
Hey, friends. Hey, Glenn.
AppleScotch pie.
Is that like butterscotch caramely kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. First slice.
Oh, yeah.
Never
But
pretty.
it looks very caramely.
Someone...
I guess butterscotch?
Yes, yes. And someone sent me a little thing that you put in that is
supposed to be the first one
you
took out? Can you remember to use it?
No. No. I cannot. It is beyond me. That's good. That's good.
That is a butterscotch apple pie.
Yeah.
I mean, what else do you need to say? It's got all those flavors, and that looks like nice, crusty.
A little bit of ice cream.
Oh.
Wouldn't that be good? we're very quickly going to demolish this piece of pie. That's really good. Could use a little bit of salt, I think. I would put a little bit of salt in there. The apples are really nice. They're not mushy.
No, this is a good choice. What'd you choose?
I don't know what was in the bottom of the fridge.
Okay.
They were little. They were little and they were red. Apples from the, and I don't know.
Okay.
If you haven't noticed, I really don't follow a lot of those rules about there's certain apples that are for baking and there's certain apples. And I know that there are.
And some of them keep their form nicely, and some of them absolutely do not. But in the end, they're all apple flavor.
Yes. Sometimes I luck out. Apparently this time I lucked out. The apples have kept their shape. They've kept their form. They've got a nice snap to them, even though we boiled them in the sugar syrup.
Oh, wow.
Right? So I thought...
That's like really sugary.
Yeah. So I thought because we were boiling them in the sugar syrup that they would
Become like a...
like mush almost. But they didn't. They've kept their shape. They've kept their snap. That's really good.
Okay.
Okay, so 1938 AppleScotch pie. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.